This is the first Tuesday of the month Waupaca City Council meeting.
Welcome to our regular scheduled City Council meeting. I do call this meeting to order, and I ask that everyone rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we'll ask Sandy to read the clerk's open meeting statement for us.
This meeting and all other meetings of the Common Council are open to the public. Proper notice has been posted and given to the press in accordance with Wisconsin state statutes, so the citizens may be aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting.
And also take roll.
Brian Smith.
Here.
Steve Hackett.
Here.
Lori Chestnut.
Here.
Paul Hagan.
Here.
Alan Keeland.
Here.
Scott Perchatsky.
Here.
Dave Peterson.
Here.
Paul Mayo.
Here.
Chuck Whitman.
Here.
Mary Fair.
Here.
And Eric Olson.
Here.
10 present. We have a quorum.
Next we have you call off 11 names, but you say 10 are present.
You don't vote.
Oh, okay, all right.
You count, but you don't
Oh,
vote.
okay, all right, just check. And I shouldn't, thanks, Paul. All right, next we have the consent agenda. These are items where we vote on with one motion, and unless there's an item on here that council would like to see moved to the regular agenda, there is no additional handouts to the consent agenda, so we'd be looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Keelan, second by Fair, that we approve the consent agenda as printed. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Under the regular agenda, we have one addition, Sandy.
Yes, under number 9, new business letter D, additional information was distributed this evening, and that's all.
Okay. With that said, we're looking for a motion to approve the regular agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Chestnut, second by Peterson, that we approve the regular agenda with that one addition. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Under announcements and correspondence on page 74 of your packet, you'll see that we have our code of ethics, and remember, on an annual basis, we just like to make sure that you had the opportunity to review that, and hopefully you had a chance to review that before you got to the meeting tonight. And we do like to make a motion that each council member is aware of the code of ethics, and that we place it on file, that we have discussed that at our first meeting in May. Anybody would like to make a motion that to place the code of ethics review on file?
I would so move.
Second.
Motion by Mayo, second by Hackett, that we place the review of the code of ethics on file. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Now, what you've all been waiting for is the presentation of the Waupaca Police Department's 2017 annual report. Brian, you want to set it up? Or you want him to just go for it? No. You could, yeah.
Jim Schultz, one of our commissioners, is here tonight to give the annual report for the police department. Jim worked diligently over the weekend, and I guess I'll be surprised what he comes up with, because we haven't discussed it yet.
All right.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, sir. My name is Jim Schultz, representing the Waupaca Police and Fire Commission, Mayor Smith, and members of the council, city staff, and Waupaca neighbors here and at home. It shouldn't come as too much of a surprise, Brian, because you wrote this, right? You have before you a packet with Chief Hosel's annual report. I think what it shows clearly is what a positive impact your police department is having on our community. They work in the schools, with local businesses, with the elderly and the public in general. And we have a department today that is a shining example of what people like best about living in the Waupaca area. Our department trains officers in police techniques, collecting evidence, interviewing. The training that the staff proves invaluable to the department's ability to effectively investigate, solve, and reduce crime in the city, because that's first and foremost what a police department does. But they do an awful lot more than that. I don't know how many of you are aware, but the police department tracks every single call that every officer responds to, whether it comes from the department or if it's something an officer stops to investigate on his or her own. And if you'd like to get an idea of the types of calls that they run up against, if you look at pages 18 through 25 in your packet, either now or later, you'll find that it is truly a variety of calls every single day. You'll see property crimes. Now, this is pretty obviously crimes committed against somebody else's property, the destruction of their property, anything from simple shoplifting or vandalism to burglary, arson, grand theft. In 2017, police department, the investigation of a 2015 arson fire was reopened, a 2-year-old crime. The initial investigation had showed that the fire was definitely arson, but the leads dwindled. And then a cold case review discovered evidence and uncovered new leads that led to a statewide investigation, found a valuable piece of evidence, one interview, a confession, and the perpetrator was convicted of the offense. Last summer, the PD responded, as I'm sure most of you will recall, to a rash of criminal damage complaints in the downtown area and at South Park. Again, good police work led officers to identify the suspects. They were interviewed, subsequently confessed, and are paying for what they did. Later in the year, this one really frosts me. Somebody bought a bunch of vehicles in the valley using fraudulent means, a closed bank account. Brought one of the cars over here to sell it because nobody knew who he was. Waupaca police were able to identify the suspect, interview him, get a confession. He was charged with theft by fraud. The vehicle was returned to his owner. These are all examples of good police work, good investigating. And it isn't just our detectives that do that. These are the officers on the street. Among the calls that nobody ever wants to have to take are calls that involve the death of another human being. Now, whenever there's death, whether it's natural causes, one of the things a police officer always has to consider is that it could possibly be something other than natural or accidental. There could be foul play involved. If you want to know what a police officer does for a living, somebody had to take the call when a 22-year-old male was found unconscious, barely breathing, didn't make it. A 4-month-old infant, unconscious, not breathing, didn't make it. 31-year-old man bleeding on the kitchen floor of his home with a gunshot wound to the head. Another 54-year-old man found dead in the driver's seat of his locked vehicle. Each of these incidents led to comprehensive, often multi-agency investigations to find out if they were accidental, self-inflicted, or foul play. Officers have to deal with sensitive crimes. These are related to sexual assault and sexual abuse of a child or an adult. 18 sex offenses, almost all of them involving minors, were investigated by our police department last year. Some of the investigations were resolved by careful interviews. Others required more in-depth investigation, including computer data recovery and DNA evidence. When I first moved here, it never would have occurred to me that Waupaca County would have a SWAT team, but we do. And they're surprisingly busy. Our SWAT team is a county-wide effort by a number of different law enforcement agencies. And when you see somebody with a SWAT insignia on the uniform, it means that this is a specially trained officer trained in special weapons and tactics. Waupaca County SWAT team deals with non-routine and high-risk incidents, which include executing high-risk warrants that could pose a danger either to police or the public. Last year, Waupaca County SWAT responded about a half a dozen times to execute high-risk search and arrest warrants. The universally successful deployments resulted in the confiscation of numerous drugs, drug paraphernalia, explosives, illicit cash, recovered stolen property, and firearms. In one incident, one member of the SWAT team suffered a gunshot wound. That suspect surrendered when the officers returned fire. Between calls, the SWAT team trains hard every single month. As you know, Waupaca is not immune to the heroin and methamphetamine epidemic in our country. As the availability of heroin and meth continues to grow, we expect it's going to have an effect on our crime rate in the future as well. In Waupaca Police Department's efforts to combat drug abuse and distribution, we continue to have an active role in the Central Wisconsin Drug Task Force. That's 14 law enforcement agencies spread through 7 counties in the central part of the state, working together. Waupaca Police Department responded to 163 incidents in which drugs were identified to be involved. You'll see charts on page 7, 8, and 9 of your packet that explain exactly what the crimes were, what sort of substances were involved, and how many arrests were made, that sort of thing. One thing that's kind of misleading when they talk about the amount of heroin recovered, this is not really an accurate indicator of how much of this poison is actually in our community. Heroin is normally used or destroyed before police get to the scene. A better, more accurate indication of the heroin problem in our area, and everywhere else for that matter, is the number of overdose calls. Last year, our guys responded to 23 drug overdose calls. 14 of those were from heroin, 3 more. Actually, 3 of the 14 were all in the same place at the same time. 3 victims OD'd at the same time. 9 of the overdoses were using prescription medicine, I should say abusing prescription medicine, and 2 more were meth overdoses. Interesting wrinkle. If you've been watching what the police department has done the last year or so, does everybody here know what Narcan is? Does anybody not know? Okay, well, the police carry Narcan in a nasal spray. It's probably the only way to save somebody, save their life from overdosing from heroin and other opioids. And guess what? The druggies figured that out because it's not that hard to get, they're carrying it themselves. They're drug abusers, and they are so sure that sooner or later they're going to screw up and kill themselves. They carry Narcan when they can. I don't know if they plan on self-medicating or if they are counting on friends. Good luck either way. Our officers are trained in the use of carrying Narcan and using it. Another thing is when we first started doing that a year ago, we had it exactly 2 weeks, and we had already used it twice to bring back people literally from the brink of death. That's how often it has to be used. Right now, it is still the goal of our department to add a full-time drug officer. A lot of other departments have already done it. More are doing it. And with the advent of our new drug court, which was established last year, the department feels we need to take a proactive funding approach on that drug enforcement officer. All right, this is actually kind of depressing. You keep talking about all these crimes and that, and if you look at the charts, there's a lot of them. It keeps everybody busy. But as busy as they are, our officers are committed to maintaining a positive relationship and positive image with the citizens they serve. Last year, our officers stayed involved and invested in the community in some pretty creative ways. I'm just going to run through them. We have a Facebook page. Of course, everybody has a Facebook page. With ours, we like to educate people about laws, warn them about scams, crime trends to watch, and occasionally to get tips, asking people to help us identify perpetrators. Stuff the Squad event resulted in 169 bags of food donated to our food pantry. 4th annual Shop with a Cop. Officers take kids out shopping and bring them back and make sure their presents get wrapped. They have pizza and a visit from Santa. And I don't have words to describe what that's like at the end and the impact it makes. Waupaca PD adopted 2 families for Christmas last year with the help of Council Member Lori Chestnut. Thank you, Lori. The officers and the police commission donated about $300 so these families could buy gifts and toys for the adopted families. Stepwise classes are special programs for elderly, for senior citizens. Topics include pedestrian safety, internet safety, tips on protecting against scams and fraud, helping seniors look out for each other and themselves. The prescription drug take back. Nearly 80 pounds of unwanted and potentially dangerous prescription drugs were dropped off at the PD on 2 separate days and properly disposed of. At the breadbasket, your officers serve an average of 200 meals a night, and the goal is to keep doing that at least twice a year. For the first time ever, Fleet Farm allowed somebody to host a brat fry, and that was the Waupaca PD, and we sold food and we talked to people about the opioid epidemic. And the money that was raised, not only from selling food, but people who, when they realized the problem, were willing to donate. That's how we bought the Narcan and the equipment that's necessary. Because of the relationship that our department has with the community, we were also able to buy tactical vests for the squads, tactical helmets for our officers, and all of the money used to buy that pretty expensive equipment was donated by the community because they think that highly of the department we have now. Our department serves over 30,000 people within a 15-mile radius of the city. Our budget last year, I'm rounding here, $1.58 million. And it's broken down into 7 separate areas. If you look at page 16 in your packet, you can see what those are. Administration, patrol, clerical, drug enforcement, the school patrol, school liaison officer, and the building. Table 1 will show you that the actual budget for each of those programs, and it shows that we came in over budget by 1.13%. However, we also received about $18,500 in revenue, if you look at Table 2 on that same page. OWI grant money, state aid for training, drug grant money from the federal government for vest replacement. So the actual end-of-year budget is a little more than $600 under budget, just the way we planned it. A year ago, I was fortunate enough to stand here and give this report, and I told you at that time that I thought that I felt really, really good with where the police department was, and I was optimistic. And this year I can say unequivocally, I feel even better than that. Each of our officers, and I mean everyone without exception, has special skills, training, and experience to share with the department. And each of them has shown in numerous ways that they are a benefit to the community as well. Now, if you would just look at the last page of your packet, there's a list of who's on the department. And it didn't occur to me right away until I was doing this report. Those 15 people, there are 10 officers, 2 sergeants, a detective, a lieutenant, and the chief. 15 people do all of this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Think about that, 15 people. To me, our officers set a good example not only for the police department, but for every member of our community. I feel really good about the department. And if you have any questions, I will happily refer them to the chief. If there are questions, seriously, anybody, or anything on the report? If not, thank you so much for your attention, sir.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate the coming tonight and making that presentation to this. Council members, especially new council members, understand that on an annual basis, we ask the Police and Fire Commission to make a presentation to us on the highlights and some of the lowlights of the year that we've had. So we much appreciate Jim volunteering his time to make that presentation tonight. We are, next up here, we have the Municipal Clerks Week proclamation. I'll go ahead and read that. I'll read it off paper here. Yeah, thank you. This is Municipal Clerks Week proclamation, May 6th through May 12th, 2018. Whereas the office of municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world, and whereas the office of municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants, whereas the office of municipal clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of governments at other levels, and whereas the municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of municipal clerk through participation in education programs and professional organizations, whereas municipal clerks have pledged to ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all, and whereas it's most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the office of the municipal clerk. Now therefore, I, Brian Smith, Mayor of the City of Waupaca, do hereby recognize the week of May 6th through May 12th, 2018 as Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to all municipal clerks and staff and the vital services they perform and dedication to the communities they represent. Thanks, Sandy. Henry, you're the clerk, but of course, every clerk has a great assistant, and so we have to thank Sandy also along with that. All right, in your packet, we have a longtime member of a couple of committees. John Ryan, you can see, has submitted his letter of resignation from the Library Board and also the Community Development Block Grant Committee. At one time, John, I think, was your chairman of the Library Committee for a few years, and we're certainly going to miss his participation in both of those groups. At this time, we would ask that council just approve his resignation from those two posts.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Chestnut, second by Hackett, that we approve of the resignation of John Ryan from the Library Board and the CDBG Committee with regrets. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Next, we have public input. This is for non-agenda items. If there's anybody in the audience or council members or staff that would like to discuss a non-agenda item with us, please step up to the podium, give your name and address for the record, and limit your discussion to 3 minutes or less.
Hello, everyone. Anita Olson, N3541 Anderson Road. I just want to talk to you generally about downtown because I see you have things coming up that will relate to downtown and specific things, but I want to talk about the overall view of downtown. I've had a business, embellishments on North Main, for 15 years. During that time, I've seen businesses come and go. I see now still many empty storefronts. Many of those, once empty, do not refill with the retail store, but they refill with a service business, insurance, a title shop, or counseling agency. And I'm afraid that once they fill with those, they will remain those kind of businesses. That doesn't help traffic to those of us who have retail businesses, and it is an ongoing concern for me. I know of at least 2 or 3 people who are interested in having businesses downtown, but they see those empty storefronts too. And that makes them concerned. So I would just encourage you to think about that overall as you continue to talk about different subjects related to downtown, and maybe come in and visit us, see what we're like, what kind of businesses we have downtown. And I thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita, for coming tonight. Anybody else that would like to give public input? Anybody else that would like to give public input?
Rick Walter at E25, 37 Spencer Lake Road. The non-agenda item that has come to my attention is regarding the B7 zoning ordinance. And the hope, given that there's been a lot of discussion about this going into the October approval of that and into today's reading, is that we're looking forward to an ongoing discussion with city staff and the council. And there is some concern that there may not be a priority to do that. And yet, I've been excited to see the change in the process work, but a lot of people haven't been involved in that, a lot of the stakeholders and building owners. And I'd like to reassure them that there is a priority in economic development for the city of Waupaca, and particularly pertaining to the B7 Riverfront District ordinance. So as we move forward, we would like to see this as a pliable ordinance, perhaps in view of economic development. And specifically, and I'll wrap up with this, is that we would like to see a condition where it's not just owner occupied for live work, but that it could be a lease situation for live work. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rick. Anybody else that would like to give public input? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to unfinished business. This is ordinance number 0418. This is an ordinance amending section 17.201, parent 2 of the chapter 17 of the municipal code of the city of Waupaca, entitled Amendments to District Maps. This is our second reading, so we anticipate a vote on this tonight. Brennan?
Thank you, Mayor. Members of council, this item starts on page 107 of your packet. We did have the public hearing last month, and this was discussed 2 weeks ago during the council meeting. This is a follow-up action to the October 2017 adoption of the B7 Riverfront District guidelines and zoning ordinance. We are proactively rezoning these properties due to an application that our department has received for a live-work development located on Main Street. Just want to address the council. We are hearing the concerns from the business owners. We are addressing, I would say, the concerns that were brought forward at the last meeting. We'd recommend that this rezone goes through this evening for the council, but in speaking with staff, we have committed to having some form of a downtown business forum later summer, early fall. There are a couple issues that have been brought forward to our department, with the this rezone and some other discussion points. We're also coming up on our 1-year anniversary of the adoption of the downtown redevelopment plan, and there's some low-hanging fruit in that plan that we would like to meet with business owners and address with them as well. So we believe that the continuing conversations that some of the business owners are seeking, we will certainly, we are committing to a formal meeting later this year, which we'll certainly get that information out when we do organize that. But for this evening specifically, I'd like to have this ordinance move forward so we can get the project that's slated for Main Street approved as well.
All right, so again, you heard the summary of the discussion on this ordinance. We did discuss this at the last meeting. Hopefully, if you have had any questions with that, you've taken the opportunity to talk to staff about that and directed the public also to discuss this with staff. If you haven't heard anything and you're okay with this, I would look for a motion to approve this ordinance.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion by Hackett, second by Keelan, that we approve ordinance number 0418. This is ordinance that amends our district maps. Any discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Steve Hackett,
Aye.
Lori Chestnut,
Aye.
Mary Fair,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Alan Keeland,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Chuck Whitman,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
Paul Hagan,
Aye.
and Eric Olson.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
All right, Brennan, you got a couple pages here. So next is the special use permit for 112 North Main Street. Tammy Walter is the agent for this special use permit request.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This agenda item is on page 120 of your packet, and this is a special use permit that our department of the city has received for the creation of a live-work development at 112 North Main. The live-work would consist of a space up front that would be of a commercial artist studio with a residential unit in the back that faces the park and located on the main level of the facility. There may be other improvements that do happen with that building, but the special use permit is required because of the live-work development that they're seeking as part of their project. The conditions are located on page 121 of the packet, and based upon the conversations that and concerns that were brought forward to staff and the council at the last meeting, item number 6, which is the temporary banner, we would like to maintain that condition. We feel that the temporary banner that was installed last year and the fact that the business is opening at the end of May of this year, that gives them suitable time to actually complete that requirement. There was concerns about the garbage and screening of that in the back of the property. We would maintain that condition as well. However, if there's an alternative location or alternative option for refuge facilities, we can certainly adapt to that requirement. And then we have talked with Henry, and Justin and I have talked internally regarding the burying of the utilities back there. After the continued conversation, it is a little bit of a larger project. We've all had the opportunity to go back there and take a look at that, and we would actually like to suspend that requirement for 1 year as staff work with the property owners and the electric company to come up with a potential solution to bury the rest of the wires back there and hopefully move forward with the project within the next year. Otherwise, the rest of the conditions as approved by the Plan Commission.
Okay. And Brennan, have you had the opportunity to talk with Tammy about this? And
I have not specifically, since I was out of the office for work and vacation, but I know that they had a conversation with Henry in my absence.
Yeah, and I did explain. I think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. I think the electrical was your main concern, and I kind of went over the history when we did that project years ago. That there was a cost sharing by property owners to get that buried, and I think Main Street Waupaca as an organization contributed to make it happen. And so the property owners did have some skin in the game. So I think our approach to that is to talk to everyone that's affected, get WPS in and see about coming up with a solution to get all that buried in the back. I don't know, Tammy, if you were totally familiar with the sign. I think you made the comment in the last meeting that you felt like until you were open for business that you should not be held to having a sign, but given that you're going to be open soon, maybe that could move forward. So yeah, I had a conversation, but I think we focused mainly on that utility burial.
okay. Okay. Any comments by council? Tammy, comments?
Just one minor comment that the item 5, that should be refuse containers. It's a typo, I guess. I would hate to see, have people seek refuge in those containers.
Duly
You're
noted.
the guy that everybody complains about on Facebook. But you're right, it should be corrected, yes.
Tammy Wolter, E2537 Spencer Lake Road. I own 112 North Main.
Can you pull your microphone down, please? Thank you.
Henry, I do think when you and I and Rick, we were on a conference call last week, that there was some discussion about extending the sign deadline to a deadline that would equal the extent of the building permit process, which I believe is 2 years. We are opening the end of May. It's a soft opening. There's not going to be a grand opening. We're still working on developing what the inside and the outside are going to look like, because we're at May 1 and we're opening in less than 30 days. So I want to do the sign justice. I would like to ask for a little bit more time. I will do it as quickly as I can, but give me some time to design something that I think would enhance the downtown and what I'm trying to achieve. And right now, I can't put a lot of focus on that. So I would like a little more time on that. Thank you.
Okay, so right now, what you're requesting is a little bit more time. The end of the year is December 31st, and that's when we're asking that you have that's one of the stipulations, that you have your permanent sign up by December 31st, but you're asking to extend that time a little bit. Is that right? If I understand right? You could just shake your head, that would be great. Okay, Brennan?
I mean, the temporary sign has been up for over a year to begin with, so I felt when we put this recommendation together to the Plan Commission that providing it or allowing them to the end of December would be an acceptable time period, because that would be almost a year and a half that sign would have been up on that building.
The temporary sign went up the end of October this last fall.
How about 1 year from adoption or approval of the special use permit this evening, May 1st?
That would give you 5 additional months, and
I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
yeah, I don't think you want to be putting it up in December anyway, so this would be
Right.
nicer
That's one of the issues, that it seems like it would be easiest to put it up at a decent time of year, and a year from now. Right? I think
Okay.
that sounds fair. Thank
So
you.
everybody, write on your screen that we're changing that to May 1st. Okay. Any other comments from council or staff? Otherwise, we'd be looking for a motion to approve the special use permit with that one change.
I'd move to approve the special use permit for 112 North Main.
Second?
Motion by Hagan, second by Olson, that we approve of the special use permit. Any discussion? If not, Sandy will call the roll.
Paul Hagan. Alan Keeland.
Aye.
Chuck Whitman.
Aye.
Steve Hackett.
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky.
Aye.
Dave Peterson.
Aye.
Paul Mayo.
Aye.
Lori Chestnut.
Aye.
Eric Olson.
Aye.
And Mary Fair.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
All right, next, another ordinance, 0618, Brennan.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This item is on page 133 of your packet. This is a culmination of about a little bit over a year's worth of work with the Plan Commission to come up with the ordinance for a multitude of regulations for animals within the city. We've had multiple inquiries over the last couple of years for different types of animals, and we felt it was best when we made the recommendation to the Plan Commission that we strip out some of the existing ordinances that are in there and create one new ordinance, which we're identifying as Chapter 26, which regulates all animals within the city. And this is a combination of, again, anywhere from exotic animals to chickens within the city and other animals, cats and dogs.
All right. Again, this is the second reading of this ordinance, so you've had the opportunity to look it over and find out if there's any public input on this. If you have not, and you're okay with approving this, I would ask for a motion to approve this ordinance.
I move that we approve ordinance number 0618.
Second.
Motion by Fair, second by Peterson, that we approve of ordinance number 0618. This is an ordinance to create chapter 26, regulations of animals. Any discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Lori Chestnut.
Aye.
Eric Olson.
Aye.
Paul Mayo.
Aye.
Alan Keeland.
Aye.
Steve Hackett.
Aye.
Paul Hagan. Scott Perchatsky.
Aye.
Mary Fair.
Aye.
Dave Peterson.
Aye.
And Chuck Whitman.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
All right, next then we have from Justin, we have the street lighting update.
Thank you, Mayor. My memo can be seen on page 152 of the packet with a few supporting documents behind that. As you recall, on the April 4th council meeting, we had a discussion on the streetlights, the policy that was updated, the program where we removed about 90 lights, lighting in general within the city, and Alderman Keelan suggested moving towards a prescribed or prescriptive lighting. So I, of course, looked into it as I was requested to do. Just to kind of give you a little more information, prescribed lighting, basically you set categories, developing light levels in certain areas. So in high commercial areas would be brighter, back roads would be dimmer. And so you'd set a standard and you'd go around and measure and you would set your lighting according to what you got on a light meter. So this would require us to purchase a light meter and drive around or walk around and take these readings and see what we get. And found we could get a fairly decent one off of Amazon for about 150 bucks, so I don't think that's too big of a deal. And as I thought about how I was going to do this, came up with an idea of creating a map, as was suggested, of a ward or even of the entire city, but probably city, excuse me, and break it down per ward, and have the roadways and have a dot about every 100 feet. I'd have to have help from the GIS specialist, Rhonda. But anyways, go to every one of those dots and take a reading. So I assumed that it would take about 5 minutes per reading just to travel to every 100 feet, look at the meter, write it down on the map, kind of gather the data that way, and then I guess come back and provide my information. So when I took that 100-foot spacing over the total miles within the roadway, I came up that this would take us over probably 200 hours to survey the entire city. I have a spreadsheet on the next page, 153, which breaks down basically each ward. I only have 10 wards, not 11, 12, and 13, is it? Yeah. Kind of excluded them, assumed that they were within, I believe, 10. I think all three of them are with 10, but either way, breaking down the 10 major wards, approximate lane miles, and then total feet, and then how many readings that would take, and then it just kind of gives you the total time per ward. As I sat here and thought about this task, an extra 200 miles, the work that I've already put into it, I did a little more research because the first go around, we got most of our information on our cost, our spending from WPS, and it was mostly confidential information, so they couldn't provide everything except for kind of like the billing and population. So I reached out to some local municipalities and just kind of asked them directly. So on 154, you can see the actual municipal name, the population, and what they reported as their yearly bill. And then, of course, I got a cost per resident. So Clintonville, Menasha, New London, Stevens Point, Waupaca, and us. And based on that data that I gathered, we're still the second highest of these neighbors. the 130,000 I have for our yearly bill, that is after our program where we cut out the 90 streetlights. So we're still up there. But nonetheless, I guess I'd focus back on the first spreadsheet, on sheet 153, looking at the individual wards, because that's what was directed of me, and I guess just kind of open it up to council on your thoughts on this. If this is still something that we want to explore, I think you probably understand or can feel that my sense is I think we've put quite a bit of effort into our street lights and our program, and we've developed a new, our policy is developed to the point where we are trying to balance the light levels throughout the city, and not just looking at total cost. So I guess I'll just kind of open it up to the floor.
Alan, you wanna, you're the one that brought this forward, so.
I don't know that we have to survey the entire city. As we drive around at night, there are certain dark areas, and they're pretty recognizable. And I would think if we did some spot checking throughout the individual wards, that might be a better alternative, certainly a less costly one. That's my initial thought.
I agree. I'd like to take it a little bit further. We've received, or I've received, a couple of requests for Justin to look into certain areas that to certain residents seem too dark. Can we possibly just leave it up to the residents of the city to call either us or call Justin and say, can you look into this, rather than spending 211 hours surveying the whole city? I'm not sure that's a productive use of time, to tell you the truth, and I would like to leave it on a case-to-case basis where a citizen expresses some concern about darkness.
Well, that's what we're doing right now, Paul.
Right.
That is what we're doing right now.
Right.
So
Let's-
you're not asking to change anything then?
Correct.
Alan is suggesting something different than that, though.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, okay, but if the people that live in a certain neighborhood don't have a problem with the light level, is there a problem?
I don't know that we don't know that they have a problem. In other words, they may not express it as a problem. They just live with it. They don't like it, but they don't tell anybody about it. One of the complaints that I received was not from the individual who is affected by it, who lives there, but by someone who drives that person to her home occasionally and just thinks it's too dark, especially for someone with an eyesight problem. So that person hasn't made the complaint herself.
But the complaint was made.
Yes, it was made.
Okay.
So if we go around and do spot checking, what are you suggesting? I guess I'm trying to get a feel for what we're trying to do here. If we go around and just do spot checking, if you get below a certain level of whatever you call it, Mr. Expert on this.
Lux.
Okay. If you get below that, does that mean that we're gonna put in a street light?
I would think we'd certainly consider doing that.
So then it would come back to council and council would decide? Is that?
I don't know that it has to come back to council, but council may want to develop a different way of doing it. I mean, right now, we do it at every intersection or every 500 feet, as I recall.
Roughly, that's the general policy, yes.
Right. And in some areas, that's just not enough. So I think we should rewrite the policy. Perhaps that's a council decision. But I guess it also depends on what we find out, how many dark areas there are.
Scott, go ahead.
Don't we have to decide what our base, what did you call it?
Lux, yeah. Many cities use
I mean, we don't even have that, right?
correct.
So
We don't
we're
use
jumping the cart before, or we're gonna have to get a base if we wanna do that, and then, and then all of a sudden, and remember, then that might involve putting poles and everything else up. I mean, it's going to be more than we think, I think, so.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you on that, Scott, but On the other hand, how important is safety of our citizens?
Oh, I agree, yes. I guess you're rewriting the policy. We may have to all have a discussion about having a lux.
Well,
threshold.
many cities use a 3 lux minimum for residential areas.
And what are we at?
That's lumens per square
Right,
meter.
no, but what are we at? Justin, what are we at? What is our
Our
average?
lux?
Yeah, our lux.
Don't know.
It's all over the map, I think.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
That's
probably,
what this is gonna do.
That's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Lori.
I would like to ask the chief, with your staff driving around, are they noticing dark areas? Or would they be able to come forward and say, you know, there is a dark area here, could we check it out for safety? Because, I mean, they're geared to safety, also.
Well, we can do that. Justin and I did do that last year
Okay,
when we did have a discussion. I guess one of the things that I can tell you that they did in my subdivision is they put the LED lighting in. And since they put the LED lighting in, one of the neighbors is now complaining that it's too bright and it's lit up his living room. So I don't know if this is something that the LED lighting, once it's installed, will correct. That I'm not the expert at with that, but if the council would like us to go through and look at that, we'd be more than willing to do so.
yeah, just keep track of it, maybe, you know, have a knowledge that we're looking.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I gotta tell you, instead of, I mean, if you wanted to move forward with just trying to get a idea of where the city is with the luck here, to me, it seems like instead of doing the whole city, I don't think going around and just picking out dark areas is the answer, you know, because you're gonna pick out dark areas. So I don't think that's the answer. But if you were to pick a ward, that would reduce the number of hours that you'd have to participate in there. But it's still gonna cost you money to do this if you think that it's an issue and that you would wanna move forward and have a different program that we have already. But, so I disagree with Alan that just spot checking is the best way to go. I think if you wanna move forward, I think you should just pick a ward and have Justin's people go through that ward and then report on that ward. And that will be a decent example of what the city would be throughout the whole community.
I have, I guess, a couple comments, concerns. If we're gonna go this route, do we need to establish the baseline first? Or are we gonna go out, get data, and then look at it and trying to figure out what does that mean? Because if we're going that route, well, then we need to establish some sort of standard, specification, and I have yet to find a city that does this besides like Los Angeles. I think Milwaukee does it, and I mean, not even Menasha, Stevens Point. When I talk to them, we do it every intersection. We do it in our downtowns, and one of them, I can't remember which one, admitted, we do it in the spots where the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So they have no ordinance, no policies, you know, on the street lights. And I mean, I guess we're a little more progressive, I feel, than most communities. I know Wausau was kind of like the poster child that we followed because of the WPS comments. We pretty much copied their policy, and that's what we're going with. So I'd like to know what cities, I guess, would be a good thing, and I can maybe do a little more research. The other thing is, I guess we got to do these at night. So I need to figure out if I'm going to walk this thing or if I'm going to drive. If I drive, well, I'm going to have to turn my vehicle lights off. I don't know if that's safe. Walk in the middle of the streets in the middle of the night, I guess I can wear my full reflective gear. But that might take more than 5 minutes every 100 feet then. So I guess those are kind of my concerns moving forward. And again, I just feel we've put enough effort into it, and we're like halfway there with the spacing. And Brian is right. When we get these LEDs, we're trying to make that transition, make those improvements, just try to get things spaced out right. Once the LEDs get put up, things will get much better. And, you know, I admit, a lot of it is a reaction. There was a light, now it's gone. Oh my gosh, you know, and that's going to happen. But you know, I'm not sure what these other communities are doing, that are controlling their light bills so well, or if they're not even, you know, how that works, how they're, the people that live there, if they're just live in the dark and just are used to it, or how they're actually handling that, so.
Well, and remember, council members, that the current policy now is if you feel that there is not enough light where you're at, is you make a request, and Justin has a form that a citizen can fill out, and then he will go out there, I'm assuming with one of your staff individuals, or maybe you do it yourself, and you will make an assessment of that.
I've done it myself. I've done it with Roger. Roger's done it himself. And usually when we get those are the areas that I focus with my request back to WPS of either increasing the power of the lights or getting LEDs to try and compensate for that light loss, or, you know, just to appease people.
And maybe the best answer then is when somebody makes that request and they are not satisfied with what Justin or Roger have suggested, that then they have an appeal process, which they do, that could come to the city council, and council could ultimately decide.
I have informed people of that process, yes. If they ultimately don't like what we tell them, they can come here and appeal it.
Okay.
So nobody really has yet, so.
Okay. So what do we want to do?
I think we have a good policy the way it sits, and I think, you know, we should let it, you know, roll on, and I think we've got enough input now that we're going to maybe be more reactive to it, and especially maybe if somebody thinks it's dark, maybe we can prioritize that to be changed out to an LED, you know, and then see, like, as the point was made, you're gonna have somebody say it's too dark, and then the next time somebody, the two houses down may say it's too bright because we put too many lights up. So I think we've worked pretty hard at this, and Justin's tried very hard. I think we should just kind of leave it, run its, the course we've set here.
Okay. Anybody else?
Agree.
Anybody want to make a motion? It can just die, or you can make a motion to request something. See if you get a second. Anybody would like to make a motion?
I would move that we continue with the present policy for the time being.
Okay. We have a motion by Mayo, second by Olson, that we continue with the current process that we have for street lighting. Any discussion?
Maybe I make a suggestion, go ahead and buy one of those light meters if you don't have one. Just, that's another backup for somebody, you know, registering a complaint, and
Could probably fit that into our budget.
yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
9 ayes, 1 no, motion carries. All right, next we have a request from Health and Fitness Headquarters. This is new business, I'm sorry. To amend their lease agreement at 415 School Street. Kathy, you got a memo in there you want to just explain?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council members. My report is on page 156 of the packet. Last year, Health and Fitness Headquarters approached staff regarding the renewal of their lease of the city property at 415 School Street. I was working with Aaron Jensen on this request. Their current lease is for $3,376.53 a month. They are looking to reduce their lease payment for the next 3.5 years to $1,350. It was based on their looking at what the city receives for the West Fulton property, the C&D Rural Insurance Building, the old Quick Trip building. They pay $1,350. We looked at other commercial rents rates within this downtown area, and they're all over the board. It's pretty much whatever the property owner can get for the property is what they're renting it for. We also looked at what the rate is that we're charging for the West Fulton property, which is 53 cents per square foot. That property is 2,548 square feet. The Health and Fitness headquarters building is a much larger building. It's 4,667 square feet. So if I use the same rate per square foot, their rate would effectively be $2,845 a month. Randy O'Connell is here from Health and Fitness headquarters to present the case as to why they should be allowed to have a lower rate. We're looking at it if we stay with 54 cents per square foot and having a rate of $2,500 with the May payment and a 3.5-year lease. That's pretty much what staff is recommending. We've tried to come to an agreement as to the dollar amount, but Health and Fitness headquarters wants to stay at $1,350. So we told him to present his case to council, and you make the decision as to whether or not to give him that or accept staff's recommendation. Randy?
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. See a lot of familiar faces out there. If you don't know me already, my name is Randy O'Connell. I'm General Manager, Health and Fitness Headquarters. I apologize that Rick Johnson could not be here today. He had a previously scheduled medical appointment that he had to be at, so I will be speaking on our behalf, I guess. So I guess going back in terms of how this all began, we were leasing in the Grand Seasons Hotel back in 2012, looking for a new place. We needed out of there. We're getting a little too big for our britches. We came across the School Street location, and as most of you probably know, Rick made a very charitable donation to the city to purchase that facility. Right, a little over $200,000, I believe. In addition, Rick has put approximately $260,000 of renovations in that facility, as well as donated $50,000, I believe, $25,000 to the Park and Rec Department, $25,000 for any maintenance or anything to the facility. Back, kind of rewinding 5 years ago, the question was, do we even pay a lease? I remember the conversation was Aaron Jensen at the time. Do you guys want to pay a lease was the question, and whether he had the proper authority to set that or not, I'm unaware of that. But Rick, and kind of at the time, we were looking to become a YMCA, and he wanted this to be an additional gift in terms of having a relatively high lease. The lease was actually to $3,000. It's very comparable to what we were paying in the hotel, and having full use of a pool and more square footage. He looked at it as an added gift to the city to have a lease of $3,000 is where we started here. Obviously, the YMCA is not here now. We're here 5 years later, and Rick does still own it. And so we are looking at a reduced rate, I guess, and this is my opinion, I guess, is in terms of based on Rick's charitable donations. I mean, in listening to and talking with Kathy, a lot of the conversation has to do with how does this compare to the Fulton Street rental. To me, it's not the same scenario by any means. So, and I guess my point and my opinion would be, and again, it's mine, not Rick's, but he's not here, so we'll go with it. But is that I mean, based on his donations, based on everything that he's put forth and just having his name on the building, I've never heard where someone who has donated that much was required to pay a lease, especially when his name is on the building. And I've seen a lot of scenarios with working with the YMCA for a short period of time and everything. It just, in thinking with all these big donations and stuff, I don't know. To me, it just seems a little silly, I guess. So we're not asking for a free ride by any means. We chose $13.50, which, from speaking with Kathy, that would exceed any tax benefit the city would receive, property tax wise, if someone else were to own the building. And as well, it would probably take care of any charges in terms of refuse, minor maintenance around the building there. So.
Okay, so you're coming to council requesting that you pay $1,350 a month rent?
Yeah. Yes, Mayor.
Okay, and it's staff's recommendation that we use the square footage calculation to figure out what the annual rent is, and that comes out to about $2,500 a month.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so you've heard requests from health and fitness centers, and you've also heard the recommendation from staff. What are your thoughts?
I have a question.
Dave, go ahead.
My question is, does the city take lease from for any other property?
We only have, the other one is the rural insurance building, and just those two. And what I was trying to do was make the rates comparable so that I don't get into the same negotiation issue with rural insurance. Why is health and fitness getting 54 cents a square foot and I'm not? So.
I understood that. I didn't know if there's a third or fourth.
Nope, there's only this two.
Yeah, we're just new into this rental business, yeah. So, Scott, you had.
No, correct. Do we own this building? Is it ours? Oh, it's not Rick's. Okay.
He donated it to the city,
Okay.
that's correct? Correct, he donated it. And then he did how much in repairs?
Hold on, Lori.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Wait your turn here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and then the dollar amounts they gave were what he's, you know.
They have provided the city with
Legitimate.
$50,000 worth of donations. 25 was for maintenance, and we've used some of it for the maintenance on the building. The other 25 went to the park and rec programs. And they did donate and make almost 300,000. They donated the building, and they put in about $300,000 worth of improvements into the building.
And plus he's been paying
Over $3,300 a month in rent.
Okay.
Paul Hagan.
I think I answered my own question. I just, upon rereading this for the third time, I think I figured it out.
Okay, Paul.
I'd like to acknowledge the generosity of Rick Johnson and his family. I mean, an incredible gift to the city, and I think it's much appreciated. My recollection of this lease situation is that Rick suggested the $3,000 and escalated by 3% per year.
Correct.
And which is now 5 years later, 3376 or whatever it is. And so if there's an implication here that the city has been unfair, that I'm not sure.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. I mean, that's why we waited to this point.
Right.
Things have changed quite a bit in the 5 years. Like I said, a lot of this, the intention was to be a YMCA.
Yes.
That was part of this. A lot of you guys may have known he was given a considerable donation to them also.
Absolutely. Yep.
So.
I acknowledge that.
I just, in speaking with this as a lease arrangement, I don't want it to go on the back burner and be neglected of his donation.
Right.
I'm not insinuating that the city was unfair by any means, but we are at the first point in our lease. Since we began this, there was a 5-year term, and now I believe it's another 2-3 year terms after this. So this would be the time where we would need to bring this up.
So, in your mind, what is unfair about the $2,500? It's the same price per square foot as rural insurance is.
I just, because of the considerable donation, if this was 2 equal buildings, I guess, and you were looking to determine the total, yes, that would be fair. But I guess, again, my point is that it's neglecting any donation, anything that was given. We are still Rick Johnson's business. He did donate it. It has not passed hands. Like I said, if we went back 5 years, this wouldn't even be a discussion. We probably would be talking no lease. That was our discussion that we had back then.
Well, okay.
I don't know what the total would have been then, but it would have. I know in my recollections, it was kind of a goofy situation, obviously, because this is not something very common with this large of a donation there.
I agree. I agree. But ongoing, do you feel that the $2,500 or 53 cents per square foot is unfair?
I would prefer not to have that.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't like this. Yeah, I have an 8 and 11-year-old. I hear this fair, not fair stuff all the time. So I don't know. Yeah, in a normal lease environment, that would be fair. Is this a normal lease environment? I don't think so. That's my opinion.
Thanks.
Eric.
This 54 cents per square foot, is that some kind of standard, or where did we get that?
Well, I just used the, to make it round to $2,500 instead of the 53 cents, whereas the C&D, the rural insurance is going to escalate to 61 cents per square foot. Instead of giving him that escalation at 61 cents, I was willing to go and make it just an even number, 2,500. Instead of 24.73. So I just picked 25 and backed into the square footage number.
Where do you come up with this number in the first place?
The Fulton Street property, the Fulton Street property is 2,548 square feet. And if you divide that 1,350 into that square footage, it comes up to 53 cents. And so I'm just escalating it by a penny and not the full amount that seeing the rural insurance is going to escalate in 2018 to 61.
Where did we get the 1,350, the rental for the Fulton Street? Where did that figure come from? How did that come about?
That was negotiated. Quick Trip donated that building to the city, and I can't. There is an appraisal on file. It was over $100,000. As part of the lease, C&D agreed to do at least $20,000 in leasehold improvements over the course of owning it. We have put some money in a roof repair. I can't tell you, but my recollection is probably about $20,000 that we've put in that building to repair it. And when we negotiated the lease, these increase, you're going to be taking this up soon on the agenda. It was an extra $200 per month was the escalator. It wasn't an inflation. It was just a whole number. So that was negotiated.
We actually put that up on almost like in a bid process.
Yeah, we did. You're right.
Yeah, it was a bid process as to what businesses would pay what. And that's how we established the market rate.
I think that, so we have 2 buildings that we own and rent and lease. So if we had 3 or 6 or 10, but we need to be consistent. I think if we're at 53 cents a square foot, we should charge 53 cents a square foot at this point, not rounding it off, not just, that should be our policy. And then whatever kind of incremental increase that would be passed on to leasee number 2 in X number of months or annually or in 2 years or whatever. We need to have a policy that we follow consistently.
If that's the case, then you wouldn't be escalating C&D rural insurance.
Then what? I'm sorry.
You wouldn't be escalating rural insurance to 61 cents.
Where, how, why are we escalating them? Was that in your?
That's in the lease agreement with rural insurance.
Okay.
So there is but what we're trying to do is negotiate with Health and Fitness headquarters a lease agreement that is not, how would you say, as low as what they're looking at. They're looking at 29 cents per square foot at $13.50 because of, they feel they've put more money into the building and have given more things, additional funds to the city. So they feel they've been a really good community partner. I also don't want to have to try and lease that building if they decide they can't afford.
Kathy,
Sure.
that wasn't the question here. So 53 cents is what C&D Rural Insurance was paying on January 1st, okay? And January 1st is when their contract was up. So they have not been under a contract since January, okay? So, and that's what they were charging, was 53 cents at that time. And that's why we're using that figure now, okay? Alan?
I don't think the buildings are comparable, and I don't think you can assess them at the same rate per square foot. I think 53 cents is wrong. HFH has put in substantial improvements, leasehold improvements, at their expense to the benefit of the city. So I'm not sure we should be charging 53 cents a square foot. I think it should be something lower than that.
Thank you, Alan. That's the point I'm trying to get across is
Randy,
that, oh, I'm sorry.
We go in order here, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I have a hard time with council too, and they're used to me.
I'm new to this.
Yeah, that's
Chuck
all right.
had to help me out with the packet ahead of time here.
Lori?
I'm going to agree with Alan that they're not equal. And you know, you said you put a few dollars in it to maintain it. Well, and then you're putting how much into rural? And they're going up. Is the contract now negotiated for them to go up to 61? It is? Okay. But I'm still looking, you're not looking at equal properties.
Okay. Anybody else? Comments?
But how equal are they, or how unequal are they? How do we determine that? So I guess if we can all agree that then whenever we have a situation like this, we're going to treat each potential lease based on its merits or its, I don't know, based on what? Do we even know what it's based on? Because, I mean, I think it's wonderful that this building was donated and all the money was given. I think it's great, and I agree with Paul. We need to commend Mr. Johnson and the people that have given that value to our city. But I think we have to have something that's more consistent.
Paul, you were first there.
You have to look at each rental property differently based on its merits, based on its location, based on the configuration of its square footage, based on its use. It's very difficult to say if one person is paying one thing, another, it should be the exact same thing. So I think it's very, and I won't use the word fair, I'll say equitable, that the $2,500 is actually, I think, a very good compromise in this particular case. So that's my opinion. I believe we should vote on staff's recommendation of $2,500 per month. It acknowledges both the reduction, but it also maintains at least some of the income to the city, which I assume is very valuable.
Okay. Scott? I didn't hear a motion yet, so I'll keep going here.
Yeah.
Scott?
I guess my point is, and I kind of agree with Al a little bit, that there was a lot of charitable giving involved in this, and I think each one of these leases we do has to be taken separately because this, and I know staff doesn't like this, and you want to make everything straight and very ruly, but this is, I think everything's unique. If somebody else bought a big building and you know, and stuck $500,000 or $750,000 into it. I think now you've already reduced it. Maybe we can have a discussion here about splitting the difference, and, you know, I don't know where, you know, we're not looking to make a big profit. We're gonna maintain the building, I think. I'm sure that plenty covers it, doesn't it, Kathy? Well,
Steve?
I hate to agree with Paul, but every once in a while we do, don't we, Paul? But I do agree with what Paul said, that you have to be fair, but you have to be businesslike, and we have to charge them a fair price, not necessarily because they donated. That was their business to donate it. They wanted to do what they wanted to do, and they donated.
Dave? Randy, I'm gonna get you a chance to talk.
Fine.
Go.
I'm also of the opinion if they put X amount of dollars into the building, that's to their benefit too. You got more customers coming because you got better equipment or better facility in general. So they're seeing some profit from that too. And as a council person, I would hate to say, well, somebody donated this much, or they give it the gold level or the silver level or the bronze level. Now we gotta give them a bigger break here or there or there. I'd much rather stay consistent.
Okay, Paul?
Again, the original lease amount was $3,000. It was something that Rick himself suggested with the 3% escalator, and now $3,376. That amount is being reduced by 26%. And Randy is implying that that's not fair. And I respect your opinion, you know, but I think it's very fair.
Anybody else? Randy, you wanna?
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of go back to what Kathy said in terms of looking at other lease agreements throughout this city and everything, that is basically, you get what you can get for the space. I guess, and whether it be fair or unfair, maybe I do believe it's, I still don't want to say unfair, but based on the donation and everything, I don't think a get what you can get thing would apply to this. Like I said, it's not like we're looking for a free ride. I thought our recommendation was very respectful. It wasn't asking for no lease at all, so.
Yeah, one thing, Mayor. Isn't the police department, fire station, the fire station part is leased by the district, so wouldn't that be a city-owned building that is also leased?
Man, I don't know what that lease amount is.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it would be for square footage, you know, that's something we'd have to, but wouldn't that be also one?
I think it's a little different kind of space.
Yeah,
Well,
that's another thing there, you got three different, now you'd have three buildings all together, three different ones also.
yes, not comparable to each other. That's the point I was making.
Yep.
And that lease is coming up for renewal this year.
Well, you can base it on the dollar amount, or you could base it on the square footage amount, but either way, you come down to whatever the dollar amount rent is. I guess, Randy, I have to make sure that council knows this too, that Health and Fitness Center is a for-profit business.
We are.
You are a for-profit?
Correct.
Okay, so you're not, you keep throwing in YMCA, but you guys are a for-profit business.
No, yeah, I just bring up the YMCA. That was the history of it. I mean, that was, like I said, that was,
Right.
yeah, not insinuating that.
I know, I get it. I just wanted to make sure.
It was just the
council knew
backstory.
that. Okay.
I would make a motion to renew the Health and Fitness Headquarters lease located at 415 School Street for an amount of $2,500 per month for 3.5 years with a 3% lease payment increase each year, effective May, or this month.
Okay, we have a motion by Hagan,
Second.
second by Hackett, that we approve of a lease agreement with the Health and Fitness Center for 3.5 years at an amount of $2,500 with an escalator increase of 3% each year on the annual basis. What's that?
Effective immediately.
Effective May 1st. Okay. Any discussion? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
Well, you know what, I think this is a contract and we probably should take a roll call anyway, so I don't know why Sandy didn't fix this before I got that far. So let's vote again, and we had a few yeses and nos anyway, so.
Okay.
So we're gonna have Sandy call the roll on this.
Scott Perchatsky,
No.
Alan Keeland,
No.
Eric Olson,
Aye.
Paul Hagan,
Aye.
Mary Fair,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Lori Chestnut,
No.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
and Chuck Whitman.
No.
And how about Steve Hackett?
Aye.
6 ayes, 4 noes, motion carried. All right, and Kathy, you'll be in contact with Randy then? Okay. Thanks for coming tonight, Randy.
Yeah, would have just one request, that we just recheck the square footage of the building though, and looking at the blueprints, 4,600 seems a little rich, based on the blueprints from the remodel, so
Okay,
just a thought.
okay.
All right.
You want to do that, or you want us to?
I'll get my tape
bring in our
measure out.
master-
I'm bringing it out.
Okay, all right. Okay, let's move on then. New business still. We have a Hydro Corp contract renewal. Justin.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, on page 161, you can see my memo. Following it is information from HydroCorp, including a proposal and a service agreement. This company performs our cross-connectional control program for commercial, industrial in our city. Residential, we handle that with our water staff. We've been using HydroCorp for the last 6 years. We've had 2-year contracts with them. I guess renewed 3 different times, so this would be up to the 4th. This program, Cross Connection, is a DNR regulation, and basically it's for the health of our water system. What they do and what we do is we go around and do inspections and make sure certain devices are compliant to prevent backflow, siphoning, vacuuming, that sort of thing. So when water goes in through a meter, it doesn't come back. Of course, you know, for contamination reasons, once it goes through, we'd like it to stay on that side. There's attached information. There's quite a bit there. You can read through it. I'll provide more details if you would like. What we're looking at here is a 2-year agreement, which is the same amount and basically the same terms as the last 2-year agreement. So annually, it is $14,832. The total contract is $29,644. So in the action, just make sure you make that distinction. I didn't make that clear in my memo there. But we have this budgeted within our water funds. And again, I'd just like to go ahead and renew this contract without seeking additional quotes or bids on this. Yes, Steve.
I think that you gave us the wrong figure. I think it should be 29,664. In your notes, you had 29,644, but I think it should be 664.
Let me just rerun the math on that again.
It is down there, yeah. There are 2 different numbers.
Well, can you read
Yeah,
on?
it should be 664. Sorry about that confusion.
Is this an increase or decrease from the last
This is
contract?
the same.
Same?
Same as last contract.
It's not that easy being a numbers guy, is it?
I should have consulted with my accountant.
Right?
That's his first mistake all year.
Right,
Break.
That's former accountant.
Okay, yeah, right?
Not retired yet.
So we're looking at a motion to approve this 2-year contract.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Hackett, second by Keelan, that we renew the agreement with HydroCorp Incorporated for 2 years, not to exceed $29,664. It will go through May 31st of 2020. Any further discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Chuck Whitman,
Aye.
Eric Olson,
Aye.
Paul Hagan,
Aye.
Steve Hackett,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Alan Keeland,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Lori Chestnut,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
and Mary Fair.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
All right, thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Next, we're looking at renewing the lease for the old Quick Trip building, the C&D Professional Insurance Services. Henry, your name's on this.
Yes, Mayor. My memo starts on page 188. The terms of this renewal are stated in the lease. The lessee is currently paying $1,350 a month, and the lease calls for, when the renewal occurs, that the monthly lease goes up to $1,550 a month. They do intend to continue renting. We had a discussion when this was initially negotiated. There was some discussion of snow plowing, and in the lease we talk about the city providing that. And I think at the time we thought we would get a little more use out of that parking lot, perhaps, as a public parking lot. If you remember the discussion when Bill's Auto did a small project a year or so ago, a couple years ago, we have 9 stalls, I believe, right there on Franklin Street, 7 or 9, and that's actually in our ordinance designated as sort of a parking lot area. And using, having this property does facilitate the removal of snow and helps the police department and fire department. We tend to store the snow for a day or two on the site, so it helps us to have it. But I do believe they get some value in us doing that. And I talked to them about, paying a little more for that, basically. And so we talked in terms, I'm not sure the number you want, but thought somewhere in the range of $25 to $50 additional a month. I think on the face of it seems reasonable to add to the lease amount, and they're agreeable to that. I told them I don't think our intent is to shake you down, but to try to recognize that you're getting some benefit from the snow plowing. So he was agreeable to that. So I spoke with him today. So I don't know if you have any questions. I mean, the terms of the renewal, all the other terms would go unchanged.
Okay, so the agreement has a rent of $1,550 per month. And again, remind me, Henry, this is, it goes up how much per year?
$200 per month. And I'm suggesting another $25 to $50 on top of that.
So which are you, 25 or 50?
Mayor, I looked at that and I calculated out what I pay for snow plowing in my business. My lot's a little bigger, all right, and there's a drive-through lane, so it's a little more complicated, but this year I'm probably going to pay in the neighborhood of $3,000 for the entire winter, which is $250 a month. So I think $50 is a great deal, and it should be that.
Yeah, and we do get benefit from having the lot.
You want to make a motion, Paul?
I will. I move that we renew the lease between the City of Waupaca and C&D Professional Insurance Services, LLC, to an amount per month of $550 plus $50 a month snow plowing.
$1,550, but yeah.
Did I say that? Did I say
15,
500?
yeah.
Oh, $1,550.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Randy might really want to renegotiate that.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Paul and a second by Paul that we enter into an extended agreement with C&D Professional Insurance Services, LLC, the old Quick Trip building, at an amount of $1,550 per month plus $50 a month to cover the city snow plowing that lot, that city lot. Any discussion?
I have a question about the snow plowing. I don't know what Paul does, but what if it doesn't snow? Do you get a rebate, or do you just pay that and you're out it if it doesn't snow and they don't plow a lot, or how does that work?
I mean, if it doesn't snow the entire winter?
Yeah, I mean, well, let's
Has
say
that
it
ever
only,
happened?
you only have to have the lot plowed twice. I guess then, you know, I didn't know.
Well, I would say that he's gonna get a real bad deal at that point, but there are
Okay.
some winters where it's gonna
Okay.
snow twice a week.
I don't know how that works.
And he's gonna get a great deal.
I think Justin can tell you that it equals out
Okay.
over the years.
Equals out? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and that's why the budget is usually fairly close if you look over a 2 or
Okay.
3 year period. Yeah.
All right, good enough.
All right. Any other discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Eric Olson,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
Lori Chestnut,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Mary Fair,
Aye.
Paul Hagan,
Aye.
Steve Hackett,
Aye.
Chuck Whitman,
Aye.
and Alan Keeland.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
All right, thank you. Next up is discussion on allowing restaurants and taverns to expand their premises in the front of their business. This is brought up by Henry. I didn't even know about this, so Henry, go.
This is the information that was distributed tonight. I want to thank Brennan for pulling it together. If you'll indulge me, can I just read the definition of a parklet? Parklets are an innovative and cost-effective way to add public gathering space to public streets. Parklets are streetscape enhancements providing an economical solution for increased public open space. Parklets provide amenities like seating, plantings, bike parking, and public art. While parklets are typically funded and maintained by neighboring businesses, residents, and community organizations, they are publicly accessible and open to all. Parklets are located in the parking lane adjacent to the curb, designed as an extension of the sidewalk. Advertising and other commercial activities are not permitted in the parklet. Now, if you remember, over the past few years, we have kind of used this concept very loosely. When we've had those downtown events, if you remember, we've had requests, and basically it was sort of a one-off kind of approach for the day of an event. And you can see some visuals of kind of what other communities are doing. And I think we talked about this in our visioning for the downtown, and we just wanted to get a discussion going and thought, well, maybe this year it made sense to maybe try a couple pilot projects. And to be honest with you, I didn't want to go and do too much work approaching businesses to see if they would do this. We do have their liquor license renewals coming up in July. And, we could, the ones that might be interested could deal with that in their applications and that kind of thing. I think it was just an idea to try to kick the tires and see if it's workable, if there was some interest. I do believe that in the future, if this is something we do more continual, and we want to think about this, is the parking stalls are, they're commerce. And it's in the public right of way that there probably should be some rent or some cost to use those stalls for the duration. I'm thinking of a summer, it'd be Memorial Day to summer, or maybe early October or something. I think those are all kind of details that we need to work out. But I guess what I don't need a decision today necessarily, unless you want to give it, but to maybe know kind of where you stand, if you like this concept, if it's, something that's workable. I can go talk to a couple businesses and see if they're interested, and we can have a further discussion on what that might look like. And you can see that there's durable materials. You got to be careful of the curb, so there's a raised, so there would be an expense to the business to do this. And I think our staff could give a little guidance on how these might look. But I think all of us have probably seen these in other places and are familiar with them, probably eaten at an outdoor space like this. So I don't know if I had any questions. I kind of sprung it on Brennan too, because he was gone, and we didn't really have much time to talk about it. But I thought since the weather's turning, that this is something we might want to try. It's, again, to some recent comments, about downtown redevelopment and things, that this might be something to enhance traffic in the downtown and things.
Henry, how about parking?
Well, these are really pretty elaborate, and if you look, like, I don't know, on page 9, now those are parallel stalls, but I bet you that platform's taken up 3 or 4 parallel stalls.
Yeah.
So you'd probably have to figure out some dimensions and things like that. Obviously, when Main Street's being reconstructed, we can't do it. Yeah.
I think it's a really interesting idea, and I'm sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
I was just
Oh.
putting my hand up so that when you're done,
Oh.
It's a good one, Paul.
I definitely think you should move forward in doing some more research and talking to people in town to gather interest.
Okay.
Paul, you're up.
Now you're running my job too?
I think anything that differentiates us and enhances our brand of Waupaca, I think is a good idea. I think has to be balanced with the concerns of taking parking spaces away and looking at a cost benefit situation. But I think this would be a very innovative way to look at maybe differentiating us and bringing people into the community.
Alan?
I do have a concern about safety. I assume that we would still have traffic traveling on Main Street, for example, and I would be concerned about the safety issue, and maybe the chief could have a comment about that.
If they're going to be on the sidewalks, we do, we have ordinances there that they can't skateboard in those areas, and I'm not sure as to how it's going to flow with the new parking strategy that's going to be out front.
Yeah, I think if you look at some of the pictures, Alan, I think they've tried to, put some kind of wall or barrier now.
Well,
a car going 25 might plow right through that.
I looked at that last picture and I thought that's scary to me. No, the last one, Henry. Last page.
There's that, what I gave you guys this evening, just to give you an example, I grabbed it from the city of Minnesota. This is their 46-page document about design guidelines and everything else. So I only gave you guys a snapshot. I can certainly send you, I'm very familiar with these from the urban planning standpoint. There are a lot of different examples out there for design standards and considerations for traffic. Minnesota alone, or Minneapolis alone has it, where they only regulate it on certain streets, for how fast the traffic can go and everything else. So there are a lot of ideas that we can certainly put forward to create a framework that would work for the city here.
Paul, Mayo, you had your hand up or not?
No, I didn't.
Okay, Steve, I'm sorry.
I think it's a good idea. I like it. However, if I owned a tavern or a restaurant, I'd love it. But if I own a jewelry store or a hardware store or something else, you're taking away parking from my customers. So I'm not so sure I would like it. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a really legitimate concern, but I think that the thought is well, it's driving more traffic and potentially more customers. And the question came up, would you let that jewelry store have a parklet? Well, our Main Street's only so big, and if all our businesses, so there's probably some limit that you're going to want to say no more than 4 of them in the downtown or whatever. I think that's where I think we want to just know that there's some comfort level if we spend a little more energy on this, that, you'd be kind of receptive to the idea. Or if it's just you want to put the kibosh on it, then that's fine too, then we won't worry about it.
Paul, go ahead.
Steve, addressing your concern, I think most of these parklets would be in front of the actual businesses, and they would be taking their own parking spaces up. And so I think that it would be a win-lose there. They'd lose the parking spots, but they'd gain extra space for customers.
Chuck,
Well, I'm just,
go ahead, Chuck.
well, you know, it's bringing up this parking, seems like that's all we've been hearing lately, is there's no parking downtown, or not enough parking, and then, yeah, it's good in one way, but in another way, we have been talking about the parking and the lack of it in the downtown areas, so how's that gonna work?
when
Go
I
ahead,
look at
Steve.
some of these pictures, and I know how much space is between some of these buildings, if you have a restaurant in there, yeah, you're taking away parking from other.
Dave?
I'm not sure where we're at in the downtown redevelopment. Wasn't there something about wider sidewalks at one point too to accommodate?
There's a little bit of a wider sidewalk, but
Parking probably not.
I mean, the average I think in downtown is between 8 and 10 feet right now. I believe we're proposing right around, I would say 10 to 12, depending on the area. But because of the angle parking, we also need to maintain kind of that buffer as well. So we're not going to be widening the sidewalks too much further than what's out there right now.
Mayor, I'd like to suggest maybe Henry talk to a couple of businesses and maybe we try it out this summer and just see how it goes. I'm a little skeptical of it, but I think it's worth a look, for sure.
Okay. Go ahead.
I guess another thing I'm thinking about is, you know, with going out into the streets more and more, you know, I'm thinking about safety, fire trucks, ambulances, squads, making always sure that there is enough room for them to get in and do stuff.
Lori, this wouldn't project further than what the parking stalls are out. Usually it's actually narrower than where you'd be parking. So a parking stall is roughly 14, you know, from the curb to where the line is about 14 feet. You're maybe at an 8-foot setback for what a lot of these parklets would be.
Scott?
I really think this merits more, discussion and definitely more research by Henry, and all these questions we're talking about are probably be asked by Henry or researched by Brennan, and so then we can report back and, get the final vote on it, so.
Chief?
I guess this is the first time I'm seeing it, so my question would be, is there gonna be parking on both sides of where the individuals would be dining? If they would be parking on both sides, I'd have some concerns in regards to if somebody comes into a parking stall, their foot slips or they turn wide or whatever it may be, that it goes right into the pedestrians. And then secondly, I don't know if that's going to be a permanent fixture that's going to be in the stalls.
It gets pulled out.
It gets pulled out. So those would be my concerns, especially with the angle parking that we do have.
Are these actual pictures, Brennan, of,
They are. Yep.
So-
And I'll send out the application manual because there's actually before and after pictures, and I know that I did a lot of research for this a couple years ago as well. So I have a image bank of a lot of these different parklets, whether it's on an angle or if it's on 90-degree front end parking. So I have a lot of different ideas I've seen.
I maybe missed this, but if we do agree to do this, Henry, were you proposing that these people pay rent?
I don't know that this year I was thinking just to kick the tires. And I think what I'm hearing is I would come back and Brennan and I'd come back with a report if there's any interest to do it. There might not be, some of these, I mean, somebody could spend, $500 in materials or more to try to make it. You gotta buy some extra tables. You're looking at, staff. How do you staff this extra space up?
You're looking like $5,000
Yeah.
to do something here.
Yeah, I agree.
Easily.
Easily.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, depending on how elaborate this gets. Yeah.
Probably got to meet a code.
Our part is just to allow it if they want something, you could approach them or, say,
Maybe
hey,
just-
we will allow this is what it is, it's gonna cost you.
Well, sort of
It's
like.
for them to decide,
yeah.
I guess, if we wanna allow it, that's what we gotta decide, safety wise, angle parking wise, you know.
Well, sort of like the four-way stop, right? We're
Right.
still kind of studying it, and
Right.
that's what I would put this as, is to
Definitely.
go out and maybe the parklet isn't so elaborate. We try to make it so it's as safe as possible, but ultimately, you would probably be doing something like this, some more in-depth policies and things, but.
You know, interestingly enough, we have a couple of retail vendors here tonight, so Anita, are you willing to share your thoughts on this? I mean, before we move on?
I have an old knee.
And it was sitting there a while,
Yes.
wasn't it?
This last weekend was in my old hometown of Muscatine, Iowa, invited to a retirement party, and it was a lovely evening, and they did have one of these parkettes right outside of the restaurant bar. There were probably 8 people sitting out there. It just had wooden blocks, fairly heavy, weighted down, and then a chain link fence. It was not, I would not think it was very expensive. There was traffic going back and forth. There were people walking into this restaurant bar or choosing to sit outside. So this is a small town, it was lovely. I would tell you that once I traveled to Norway, they have these out all year round, and they just put fake furs on the benches, and they sit out and they drink their coffee or whatever, and they sit outside 12 months of the year. So don't think too small.
What's that?
Is that the 3-minute bell?
It must have been. Any other comments? So what I'm hearing is that you want Henry and Brennan to go out and talk to the public, find out if there's any interest, and then come back with some examples of what they would do. And maybe you want to involve the chief in that too before we get back to this level. Maybe both chiefs, or Chuck as a fireman too, that just looking, or Andrew, that looking at that from a fire standpoint too. That would be nice.
He's got the inspector background, so
There you go.
go to him. He's younger too.
You can't tell him what to do anymore. Right? Okay.
Remember that.
Anything else? All right, let's move on. Henry,
Got
Brennan,
it.
you know what you gotta do.
You got it.
All right, Waupaca Community Arts Board is requesting a temporary Class B retailer's license for a street dance and Arts on the Square event on August 18th, 2018 from 6 to 11 p.m. and August 19th from 10 a.m. till 5 p.m.
I move for approval.
Second?
Motion by Mayo, second by Keelan, right? That we approve of the temporary Class B retailer's license for the street dance and Arts on the Square event, August 18th and August 19th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. I was a little confused by this one, but,
I can explain it.
yeah, okay. We got another one here for the community arts, another Class B retailer's license. I see one addition here. They're asking for the open house on August 12th, from 5 to 8 p.m. at 215 North Main Street. We're also looking at Friday, August 17th, from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., and then Saturday, August 18th, which is the same day as the Arts on the Square, right, from noon to 4 p.m. So are these all at the same address, Henry?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, and Anita, that's correct, right?
That is correct. That's our 1 week that we will have at Phantom Art Gallery.
Okay. So that's down by Session Street, is that right? Is that where?
It's next to the pet store on North Main.
Okay. Okay. All right, so they're asking for these license.
There is one caveat, Mayor. I have not heard back from the Department of Revenue. The way these work, an organization gets 2 temporary wine licenses because they're asking for wine in a rolling year. And trying to be as liberal with that interpretation to say that this week-long downtown event is one event. It's week-long, it's one event. And I put that question to revenue, and I haven't heard back from our alcohol contact. And so I think that's the caveat, and Anita's in the audience, that if they come back and say, well, these are 3 different events, then you're probably going to have one less day you can do it. So as long as you know that, but I do have an ask in to get that more liberal interpretation, and I don't know. So that would be the caveat.
If we only can have 2, I would choose to remove the one from the open house on Sunday. 2-hour time when the artists that are coming into the gallery to meet and greet them, and
Okay.
do something just bring non-alcoholic that night. You have to take one away. I should take that one.
Okay, you heard the request. Do we have a motion?
So move.
Motion by Hackett.
Second.
Second by Fair, that we approve of the request for the special beer and wine license for those dates. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Next, we have license report number 1405. These are our operator's license. Those are on page 198. We need a motion to approve those.
Move to approve.
Motion by Keelan, second by Peterson, that we approve of license report number 1405. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. And then next up, we have issues, project discussion. We have a water utility presentation by our Public Works Director, Justin Behrens. Justin.
Thank you, Mayor. First thing I'm going to do is walk around and give you a handout. This is a large table compiled by Cedar Court, which is a consultant we use on Lake Street. They do a yearly survey with their clients, I should say, based on tax rate, utility rates. I gave you, we'll be in there, just 2 tables highlighting water utility and sewer utility. So just kind of showing you where we sit with other municipals in the state. For water, we are 12th on the list of 81. And for sewer, we are 37th of 81, so about halfway in the pack as far as cost goes. See if this thing's working. All right. Oh, you wanted that dark? I guess I'll work with it. So our water division, well, this is a presentation, a quick presentation on that. It'll be about 20 minutes long on our water. And basically, our water utility is committed to providing all city residents safe, clean, and reliable drinking water. The water division is regulated by the Wisconsin Public Service, or as probably hear us saying the PSC, regulated by the Wisconsin DNR. We have 3 certified operators meeting the training requirements set forth by the DNR, and this staff routinely inspects, maintains, and install water infrastructure throughout our city. Let me get this clicker to work. All right, so we have 7 shallow groundwater drinking wells, ranging from depths of 45 feet to 88 feet into the ground. They're considered shallow. Motors on these pumps range anywhere from 50 to 200 horsepower. We have 3 water towers that can hold a maximum of 1.8 million gallons. We do not fill them up to the tippy top. Water levels are always kind of moving with demand. But if on a normal, I guess, demand period, if we had a power outage, we could supply the city with about 8 to 12 hours of water when the power is out. We have 505 hydrants, which are exercised yearly. That is to clean out the interior of the pipes in the distribution system. flush them out, and also keep them workable for the firefighters. We have 870 valves, which are exercised as well once every 5 years. That's a DNR requirement. Valves are mainly just used to isolate certain sections of pipe, typically for maintenance or replacement of pipes or shutting off water to certain customers. We have 2,700 service lines and meters, and we have about 57 total miles of water main underneath the ground. So all of which, add this all up, we provide about 2 million gallons of water to the city customers each day. So our crew, these three guys pretty much make this all happen. They're a veteran, seasoned crew. Mark, he's got 33 years of experience. When he started, I was 3 years old. So it just goes to show how much experience they have. Eric and Scott are hardworking guys. They care very much about their jobs, or I shouldn't say it that way. They care very much for the work they do. They're very proud of their work and strive to do everything the best they can. I frequently see Zeb running to and fro his truck into City Hall when he's getting the meter base or getting the list from the girls upstairs in City Hall. These guys are not alone. They're supported by quite a few of us here in City Hall. Come on. Sorry about that. Tina and Barb, who work with the billing, shutoffs, complaints, high usage, etc., those sort of administrative items. Like I said, Zeb's running in and out. He's getting lists from these two individuals. We have Kathy, of course, on the finance side, who helps with the PSC submittals, the borrowing, and in general, just kind of keeping an eye on our financial health of our utility. There's myself, the director over all of Public Works, and of course oversee the water utility. And Jesse Landry, who you know as a wastewater treatment plant guy, he is certified in both wastewater and in potable water in the DNR, so he's cross-trained and can help out with the water on short notice or whenever needed. So going over our capital plan, most of the items on our capital plan right now are routine, with the exception of the top one. That's our meter replacement upgrade. You can see, hopefully you can see that font. It's $125,000 we got set aside for the next 3 years to upgrade our meters. You'll recall that some years back we've had quite a few meters just failing. The batteries were just failing because of age. So we're upgrading. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the next couple slides. We have well rehabs coming up. We have 2 well rehabs out to bid right now. These are supposed to be done on a 10-year cycle per DNR recommendations. We got 3 wells to be rehabbed next year. And in our program right now, we're doing hydrant painting. Again, we're just painting these hydrants. We don't want them to corrode and rust away. So we have a 5-year program right now to get them all painted, to maintain them, again, just to keep them workable for the firefighters and for ourselves. Leak location, we spend about $20,000 every other year to leak location. This is a big deal because basically water loss is revenue loss for a utility. So we go around, we hire a company that uses equipment to listen to our water, to our pipes underground, and try and find where the leaks are springing. It's beneficial to us as a utility. It's also beneficial to the customers. We found a number of leaks in laterals, whether on our side or on the customer side. Cross-connection program, I've already kind of talked about that earlier tonight, dealing with the health of our system, insurance compliance, and within DNR regulations. And we got a pickup truck that's about 5 years out. So right now I'm going to switch over and show you, no, sorry, messed up. Okay, this is a typical meter within a residential household. So with our Beacon software, we're going to be upgrading all of our meters. So the bottom brass part there, that is the meter base. That's a 5/8 inch meter. That's typical for residential. As the water flows through there, there's like a spinner in there that measures the volume of water flowing through, and it kind of spins this dial. Now up on top is the actual counter. Now that keeps track of how many gallons. There's a dial inside of there. Back way back in the past, those had to be read manually. So basically you had to flip up the flap and look at it. You might recall some of them were outside on the houses where the actual, well, meter maids or the water operators would go house to house and write down the numbers. Currently, we're on a radio read. So right now, Zeb drives around. He has a handheld device. He gets within about 300 to 500 feet of these meters, and they send out a radio signal, and he picks up that read. What we're moving to is that gray little gizmo there that's tied into that. That is a cellular endpoint. What that does is it takes the meter reads and basically shoots out a text message out to the cellular network about once every hour or so, but it's collecting reads that often and sending it out basically to the cloud. So a schematic of how this looks in the bottom left, we have our couple thousand meters out there sending out the cell phone signal out to the network, going out to the cloud, and then it's going to the servers of this beacon, which is just the trademark name of the company of our software. From there, they will send the data to us, which we can then review on our computers here at City Hall or in the water department. In the future, what we're hoping to do is to have our customers be able to view their usage, their meters, real time. We're not there yet, but after a couple years when this project's done, all of you will be able to go on your device at home and see how much water you've used in the last how many ever days, months, years. So I'm going to actually show you what that looks like right now. Sandy, can I get the mic? Okay, so if you were a customer, this is what you'd see on a sign-in screen. So you'd log in, just like we do right now. We are able to review this right now, the water operators up here at City Hall, and even I have an account. So you would have a login screen that would look similar to this. It would be a little less detailed. But the things that we're looking for, top right here, we see this number, 1768, is saying status okay. We know that that many meters are checking and saying they're fine, they're communicating well. Right below it, we got 3 issues. So altogether, we got 99.8% of our meters that are using this beacon right now are saying they're good to go. So below it, the issues, well, we got 3 endpoint tampers. I couldn't prepare for this because this is changing by the hour, but what we can do though, as utility or even at your home, we can click on this arrow, and it's going to show us in the city where those tampers are. So you can see the map, you can see the little blue bubbles there. Underneath is a list of where this is. Now, a tamper is usually a pretty bad thing, but it could mean something else. Perhaps we changed out the meter, didn't reset the endpoint right. Let's chalk it up to hopefully being that. More information we gather, so we see that 1700 again here. We got that many meters being read. Underneath it, I know you can't read it, but what that's saying is there's 30 of them that have a read that's more than 30 days old. Now that's bad because now we are not billing appropriately to usage. We're doing estimated billing, which is what we do today. If we don't get a meter read, we do an estimated usage based on your historical use. So again, the water operators can click on this, see where these issues are, get the list, and go out and start solving some problems. Now another handy thing that we really like to, we see the good benefit out of this here, I apologize again for not being able to read it, but that says 182 leaks have been detected. So that's 182 people out there. These meters are saying there's a leak continuous flow going through it. So again, we can click on it, we can see that map, get that usage, and we can get that every hour. That could change based on how active we are and based on their usage. We see 157 backflows, just like we're talking. Water's coming backwards through the meter. Now that's not a good thing. You know, once the water goes through, that's what you guys should get billed for, and that's what we bill you for. We don't want that water coming back. So again, all these issues that we can quickly get and decipher, and hopefully just troubleshoot and work with the customers. We see another one. This is 62 no recent flow. So again, that could just be maybe somebody's out of town, maybe the meter is not working right, that sort of thing. Maybe the battery failed, we got to go change it. So again, just a quick decipher and being able to more efficiently address these issues and adjust our hours to better serve our customers. So if you were a customer and you were using this portal, this one would probably interest you. This is usage per week. Right now, our usage for what we have out there for these meters is up 24,000 gallons this week from last week. Now, as a utility, that makes sense. It's springtime. People probably got out. They probably did some watering. They probably did some washing, some cleaning, that sort of thing. So that all makes sense to me. But if this was your bill, your meter, you might wonder why. Why did it increase so much? So you can simply just click on, there's a monitor tab up there. It's going to pull up your monthly usage. Well, this is May 1. Let's go back to April. And it's going to show your usage by day. So if you hover over these bars, this is per day, it's going to tell you your usage per day. So you can go through here and see, okay, what did I do here on April 27th? Did I water my lawn? Was I out of town? All those sort of things that you, as a customer, can figure out what's going on with your bill. We really like this because right now, when there are high usage, sometimes there is some squabbling with the customers of, hey, you have a leak, and they tell us, no, you don't, or we don't. It's wrong with your billing. So this will help try to, I guess, cut off some of those complaints, be more proactive and work with customers, and they can hopefully troubleshoot some of these things on their own. So, so the one caveat of it, once we get done with this project after 3 years, we will have to go out for a, what's the term I'm looking for, Kathy? Rate case.
We'll have a full rate case.
Full rate case, thank you. Sorry about that. We'll have to go for a full rate case because these, the service costs about 58 cents a month to be able to review and use this software. So right now, we're just kind of eating that cost while we're upgrading. But once it's complete throughout the entire city, we'll have to do that full rate case to make sure that those are added into our rates, into our usage, and back into our billing so that everybody is basically billed the same and evenly. You'll remember that we were here not too long ago and got a 3% increase on just the usage. And before that, the last increase was back in 2011. So in about 3 years, it makes sense to kind of make those small incremental steps for another rate case. So working that way. So almost wrapped up here. Finally, I'm going to make a point about our usage. So this is our total gallons used per year over the last 4 years. Now you can see it's decreased quite a bit since 2014. Now, as a utility, it could be considered bad because less usage is less revenue. However, on the conservation side, it's a good thing because if our pumps are running less, our infrastructure is being used less, it should increase or prolong the life of that. And of course, if we can keep our usage down, that's less likely we're going to have to punch in a new well, which could be an expensive endeavor into the future. So if we can kind of maintain these levels moving to the future as our city grows, that would be optimal to maintain and hopefully keep our rates right where they are. Here's a table from EPA manual that shows in '94 there was a U.S. energy policy that was enacted basically to reduce energy due conservation. So prior to '94, it's showing faucets, shower heads, toilets, and what they use. So typically 3 to 3.5 gallons. After '94, this was mandated. These same faucets, 2.5 down to 1.5 gallons per use. And what that means for savings, percentage-wise. So basically, you can use a toilet twice as much as you used to prior to '94 well, with a newer toilet. So the conservation is built in as new homes are built in our city and as old homes are renovated. So even as our city grows, we're hoping that this conservation continues. We can just maintain and provide a high level of service throughout to everyone in our community. So that wraps it up for me. That's Water Utility 101 in a 20-minute nutshell. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask now.
What's the status of Kings coming online with our water system?
What? Say that, what's of coming online?
Yeah, we were potentially looking at providing water to a veterans home.
Yes. We're still reviewing that. I think the step we're at now is the kind of the funding process of it. We've done pretty much the study. The state has looked into it. We've looked into it. We've been a good partner, and I think it just kind of boils down to what it costs and what it means to the city and city ratepayers inside, and then potentially a ratepayer on the outside. So. Henry, is there anything you'd like to add on that, or? No. Okay.
Thank you. Justin, any questions for Justin? Great job. I appreciate keeping you updated with what you guys are doing on the water department and all over the city, actually. All right, next up, communications, recommendations of the mayor. Nothing really except that at next council meeting, the library is going to make their presentation, their annual presentation. And then, of course, that's department head nights also. Kathy?
The auditors will be presenting.
Okay, and also our auditors will be presenting that night.
We also have RDG and presenting the final for the Rotary Riverview Park Plan.
Okay. All right, bring your coffee or whatever's in here. So, sorry. Anything else?
Move to adjourn.
All right, motion by Keelan and second by Hagan that we adjourn till our next regular scheduled meeting, Tuesday, May 15th, 2018, subject to call. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. We're adjourned at 8:17 p.m. Have a great night. Thank you.